Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Rebecca Hagan-Watson, and I'm the bassoon professor at Liberty University, the principal bassoon of the Lynchburg Symphony, and the second bassoon of the National Philharmonic Orchestra in Washington, D.C. I wanted to take a second and share a video with you about the VBODA District 6 High School Audition Etude Rotation 1 for Virginia. This is the year 2023. I wanted to share this video with you in hopes that it might help you as you're preparing this etude, and just give you a few tips about some things to look out for and some things to pay attention to as you're working this up. So just to talk a little bit about it, the first thing we want to notice is the tempo marking at the top of the page is indicated as allegro moderato, and a quarter note should equal 1/16. It's a good idea to practice this slowly as you are working through it, but try to aim for a consistent tempo with a metronome. So the second thing I want to point your attention to is in measure 7, and the ritardando that's there over about the middle of the measure, slowing down into the fermata in measure 8. Then we have a new tempo marking in measure 9 with a pickup to measure 9, marked as andante con espressivo, and a metronome marking of a quarter note equals 80. And so this is like a B section, a much slower, calmer mood, maybe a little bit more dolce, espressivo, indicates that we should have much more expression in this section. And then we notice another tempo change in measure 15, the ritardando at the end of that measure slowing down into the fermata of measure 60. And then back in measure 17, back to the original tempo, allegro moderato, quarter note equals 1/16. And then the final tempo indication is the last two measures. Measure 23 indicates a rallentando to the end, to the fermata in the last measure. So also some other things to notice are dynamic markings. So it starts out a nice mezzo forte, and so you should feel like you can really play out. You shouldn't have to feel you're playing too softly, but you want to save some too so that you can open up for the forte in measure 2. And then there's a quick diminuendo already in measure 3. So a lot of tempo changes in this first part with crescendos and decrescendos. Notice that the B section, the pickup to measure 9, is a mezzo piano, and that's pretty soft in comparison, but in measure 13, it has a really big crescendo up to fortissimo. So that's the loudest part of this entire etude. So we can really bring that out, and we've got accents there leading up to that fortissimo as well. So feel free to really open up to your biggest forte, biggest fortissimo there, but then don't forget there's a sudden decrescendo the next measure all the way down to mezzo piano and then up again to forte in a very short time. And so a big shift in dynamics there. Finally, there's a decrescendo going down into the fermata into 16. So decrescendo and a ritardando there. You can really slow down and play your most beautiful sweet piano low D. When we return to the original tempo in measure 17, we have a mezzo forte, just like the beginning. So it should sound similar to the beginning, but save your crescendo. This time it's later. It's in the second measure of that section, which would be measure 18 going into measure 19. So slightly different placement for that crescendo. And then coming down into mezzo piano at the end of measure 20. Again, 21, another big crescendo to forte, and you stay forte to the end. And so the layout of the dynamics there. Finally, I also wanted to point some attention to the expression markings and articulation markings that are given. So first, we don't have any articulation markings until measure 5, where we have some accents followed by a marcato, meaning staccato and accented at the same time on the downbeat of 6. So that should be a real lead up to the downbeat of 6. We have an interesting articulation marking in 6 on beat 4. There is a staccato under the tie to beat 4, which means that that tie should be short, followed by an accent on the second 16th note of beat 4. So a little bit surprising there. We have tenuto marks in the following measure, and the B section also has quite a bit of tenuto marks, except for the big crescendo up to fortissimo with the accents, but also ending with the tenuto, the long notes in the end. Notice again, when it returns to the original tempo, allegro moderato, that there are also accents and marcato in the same place as before, and tenutos in the same place before, with the exception of the second to last measure has a tenuto on beat 3, which wasn't in measure 7. And so something to look out for as you're doing that last rallentando, make sure that that C stays long so you can really go into the fermata in the last measure. Some ideas for expression are vibrato, maybe some more espressivo vibrato in the B section, and this is measure 9, going into that, and some more powerful expression in the original allegro moderato and where it returns. As far as breath marks, I recommend breathing in measure 5 after the dotted quarter F on beat 1. Breathe after that note would be my recommendation. Measure 12 after your A, so before beat 4. And then breathe again after measure 20, after your G, before you play the downbeat of 21. The other breath marks are pretty self-explanatory, but those would be where I would recommend breathing in that phrase. Again, I mentioned this before, but I always recommend starting with slow practice, especially anything that's tricky, different passages, that you can take time to work that out before you try to bring up the tempo consistently to the markings that are indicated. So here's an example of what it might sound like. I'm just going to play this for you, and I hope this is a nice thing to listen to. I hope you enjoy. I hope this is helpful. So here we go. Thanks so much for listening. Take care, everybody.